While trying to coax a confession out of me, the bishop admitted he used to really struggle with porn and still does sometimes. He immediately then told me that I reminded him of his favorite porn star. My bishopric held a church court and asked me to tell them all about a sexual experience they were considering disfellowship for. I was 15. A bishop asked me if I climaxed with my boyfriend, and they were not the only person asked that question. This bishop SA'd him and other boys in their ward along with the church janitor. 4 of their childhood friends took their own lives and died young because of what they did. When I was 11 years old, asking if I had masturbated. Then when I was 13, 14, and 16, bishops will have these interviews asking about whether children are breaking the law of chastity in order to go into this building. A lot of them ask gross and disgusting questions that are not necessary, but again, who are we to say when God puts them in charge? My bishop told me we were not going to report the person who raped me because it would ruin the young man's life. Exact quote, "He could be hitting you daily with a baseball bat, and I would counsel you to stay married." Bishop said the reason I had clinical depression is that I had sinned to confess. Later, I went to a different bishop to confess I had sex with my boyfriend. He said I needed to tell him details: how often, what we did, how many times, did I orgasm. It was creepy. In college, after I was essayed while walking to my car after a night class, I skipped church for a few weeks, as just being outside my home felt vulnerable and exposed. The first week I went, I was noticeably withdrawn and cried quietly during sacrament meeting. My student ward bishop noticed and asked to talk. After tearfully explaining what had happened, his first response was to offer to help me repent. When seeking support when dealing with a family member who was suffering from severe depression, I was told it wasn't depression, it was guilt, and confession would cure it. He asked, "When you hug her, are you aware that your chest is touching her breasts?" I was told that if I became a lawyer, that I would intimidate men and never get married, and that it was my husband's job to make money anyways, and I would be taking that from him. My 11-year-old son's experience with the bishop, I went into the bishop's office with my son for his interview to get him the priesthood. The bishop asked him if he was following the law of chastity, and my son said yes. The bishop then asked if he knew what the law of chastity was and began explaining in detail what masturbation was and how to do it. When I asked for counsel regarding an important decision to stick with a company, the bishop said to stick with it, work real hard, and it'll all work out. Luckily, he bailed, and the place happened to close down a few months later, and everyone lost their jobs. Oh, that discernment really working, huh? My husband lost his job once. The bishop stopped him in the hallway and told my husband not to ask for any help. We hadn't even asked for help. Never in our Mormon history did we ever ask for any help. But the bishop still aggressively sought us out to tell us that. It was probably just God telling him to tell you, okay? My wife was asked why she hates kids. Surprise, she doesn't. It was fertility issues. But if you're following the gospel, do you even have fertility issues? The bishop said if I had dinner ready for my husband and greeted him at the door when he came home from work, like any good wife would, he would be less likely to continue cheating on me. Inspired advice from God. I was told by my stake president that he had the authority to order my wife back in the bedroom for sex if I wanted him to. And that stake president was Mitt Romney's second cousin. As a teenager, my bishop said I needed to repent for being a victim of SA as a young child and gave me a copy of The Miracle of Forgiveness, which is a book that was terrible to give to anybody. At 16, I went in for my annual interview and ended up confessing to some heavy petting out of guilt. He wanted details, and then he asked if I liked it. I'm sorry, is that a bishop or a pedo? I was 16 at the time, and it was just my bishop and I in his office, and he asked me if I have ever performed oral sex or received it, or if I had any sexual intercourse, and if so, how often. He said if I didn't answer the questions, I wouldn't be truthful in the eyes of God. When I was interviewed for my mission, I was asked if I'd ever had sex with animals. I don't know if that was the standard question for the time, but even a half a century later, it still makes me feel creepy. I got pregnant before I was 19, and the bishop told me that to fully repent, I couldn't love my baby. I had to resent her to pay for my sin. If I loved her, it would be loving sin. Before going to a temple trip at 12 years old, he asked me how far I'd gone with a boy and to go into any details. At 12.